Prime Minister, on behalf of the Board of Directors of IEB and its member companies, I am pleased to present to you tonight the IEB 1989 International Environmental Leadership Award for your outstanding and responsible leadership on both global and national environmental policies and issues. We admire your leadership, and would you join Prime Minister Brundtland and I for the award, please?
Prime Minister Brundtland and Mr. Roderick and Dr. Ford, Mr. Gray, honored guests, chers amis, ladies and gentlemen. The Prime Minister referred en passant very delicately to my age. 2 years ago, Neil and I were in Washington for a state dinner at the White House, and it happened to be the day before my birthday. And President Reagan stood up to propose a toast, and he said at that time, "Tomorrow, the Prime Minister of Canada will turn 48. And he went on to say, "At my age, what else can you say, Brian, except good luck, kid?" So I've taken consolation from that, but I thank you all very much for the warmth of your welcome tonight. And it's a very great honor for me to come here today to accept the International Environment Bureau Award. And I accept it on behalf of the Canadian people, who are in a very real sense the authors of the environmental progress we have made to date in Canada. We Canadians care deeply about our natural environment. Our national soul breathes its life from our lakes and forests and vast plains. They are part of us, and we are part of the environment. In Canada, the environment is a powerfully unifying force. The environment is fundamental to our identity. Preserving the environment for future generations is not merely a question of social responsibility. It is in many ways an act of national fulfillment. Chez nous, au Canada, l'environnement exerce un très fort pouvoir d'unification. C'est un élément essentiel de notre identité. Le préserver pour le bien des générations futures n'est pas seulement une question de responsabilité sociale, c'est un acte d'épanouissement national. And in a very special way, Mr. Chairman, I am honored to receive this environmental award in the presence of a distinguished international leader, the great leader on the environment around the world, Prime Minister Brundtland. Prime Minister, you and your colleagues on the World Commission on Environment and Development succeeded in developing one of the seminal truths of our times, that good environmental policy is sound economic policy, and that the two are not mutually exclusive, but mutually reinforcing. You have shown the world that the management of the environment is the management of our future. You have shown also that enlightened leadership on these major issues can rekindle mankind's hope, stimulate its ingenuity, and galvanize its effort. And I can think of no one from whom I would be more honored to accept an award in regard to the environment than Prime Minister Brundtland, and I thank her not only for that, but particularly on behalf of people around the world for her tremendous and inspirational leadership with regard to preserving our environment. And I would also like to thank Mr. Roderick and members of the International Environment Bureau for honoring me and my country with this award. The creation of the IEB by the International Chamber of Commerce was an act of environmental leadership, perfectly suited to the spirit of our times. And our times certainly demand leadership. The possibility, as Boyden has pointed out, that I discussed today with President Bush, that for the first time in 70 years of true normalcy in East-West relations, the rise in economic prosperity, the advance of democracy everywhere around the world, the information revolution, ours is an age of extraordinary promise. The prevalence of poverty and ignorance, the persistence of disease, the increase in population, ours is also an age of extraordinary challenge. Nowhere is the challenge more complex or more important than the pressure that all of us every day puts on the environment. For the first time in history, mankind is capable of altering the global environment for the worse and permanently. And nowhere is the pressure greater than on the atmosphere, the common heritage of us all. The consequences are clearly serious. This audience will know better than most that a 1% depletion of stratospheric ozone is estimated to increase the incidence of skin cancer in some people by as much as 4%. In this general latitude, ozone is thought to have been depleted approximately by 4%. You have had a thorough discussion today on global climate change, the scorching phenomenon that we got an unpleasant taste of, every one of us, last summer. And so I won't address myself to the science of this greenhouse effect. You have covered that already today. Let me just say that if the requisite remedial steps are not taken, our best Canadian scientists expect to see within 50 years an increase in the Earth's average surface temperature of between 1.5 degrees Celsius and 4.5 degrees Celsius. Temperatures could rise as much as 15 degrees Celsius in some of the polar regions. However devoutly a Canadian winter could make us wish for that outcome, and I represent a constituency that sometimes requires heat and other investments of public funds. However devoutly a Canadian winter can make us wish for that outcome, we're not going to like many of the negative consequences that will ensue. For example, increased frequency and severity of drought, a lowering of the Great Lakes, a global sea level rise of potentially very significant dimensions, increased forest disease and forest fires. Climate change is an extraordinarily complex problem. It's always difficult to make decisions with major consequences in the face of uncertainty. But it will help us in our resolve to act if we all bear in mind that because of the greenhouse gases now in the atmosphere, the Earth is already committed to some climate changes. The sun's rays are going to get stronger and the Earth is going to get warmer, apparently, no matter what we do. That makes what the IEB and other institutions, the IEB is trying to accomplish today, all the more timely, and the results all the more critical. It makes Prime Minister Brundtland's leadership on this issue some years ago appear visionary today. Nor is the emphasis we put on the environment confined to the atmosphere. You will be aware of the recent U.S. Environmental Protection Agency study that shows that in the United States alone, over 11 million tons of hazardous substances were disposed of or released into the environment in 1 year. And we have a special gathering ecological tragedy, homemade right here in North America. On the whole, our bilateral environmental record has been impressive. From the truly visionary Boundary Waters Treaty of 1909 to the renewal of the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement, the Niagara River Toxics Management Plan, the Porcupine Caribou Herd Agreement, and the North American Waterfowl Management Plan of the last couple of years, Canada and the United States have a tremendous record of growth and cooperation in the environment. There remains essentially only one important anomaly in this otherwise solid record of joint environmental stewardship. And I am referring, of course, to acid rain. Acid rain falls corrosively and without the slightest respect to the values they represent on the Washington Monument, the White House, the Capitol, and the Lincoln Memorial. In Canada, our own Parliament buildings are being similarly damaged. These facts, I think, merely symbolize the enormity of the damage our nations have been inflicting on our common heritage. In eastern Canada alone, at least 14,000 lakes are now acid dead. Another 300,000 are damaged or vulnerable. In Nova Scotia, splendid streams that used to exist no longer support the salmon for which they were once famous. And in eastern Canada, our magnificent forests are being seriously affected, including, tragically, maple forests. Mr. Chairman, we have learned that the one thing that acid rain does not do is discriminate. It is despoiling your environment as inexorably as it is ours. Your environment, from Minnesota to Maine, is being damaged. Marine life on the eastern seaboard of the United States of America is being gravely threatened. Acid rain, in fact, offers a very tough lesson in interdependence. Half of the acid rain that falls in Canada, and in some areas more than half, originates in the United States. And up to a quarter of the acid rain that falls in the United States, in the northeast corner, originates in dear old Canada. Il serait bon d'ajouter en passant que le phénomène des pluies acides n'est pas non plus étranger à l'Europe. Le spectacle désolant des statues défigurées de la Vierge Marie en Pologne, la corrosion des colonnes du Parthénon en Grèce et la dégradation des écosystèmes aquatiques en Norvège, le premier pays à sonner l'alarme, montre l'ampleur mondiale de ce phénomène destructeur. It's alive and well in Europe. And so environmental problems yield only to international environmental solutions. But environmental responsibility, like charity, has to begin at home. When we came to office in 1984, we were acutely conscious and, to be truthful, somewhat embarrassed by the fact that Canada was asking the United States for action on acid rain, but that the Canadian performance was equally lacking. And so my government and I set out to clean up our own act first. We reached binding agreements with our 7 easternmost provinces that by 1994 we would cut Canada's sulfur dioxide emissions to 50% of the 1980 allowable levels. And we're well advanced in our program. Sulfur dioxide emissions in eastern Canada are down 40% already. Canadian export of sulfur dioxide to the United States has been reduced by 1/3. Canadian firms and utilities have embarked on programs pursuant as well to some tax considerations and a lot of moral suasion. Firms and utilities have embarked on programs to install new processes and technologies which, when completed, will cost approximately $500 million per year. You won't be surprised to hear that I made these same points to President Bush when he visited with me in Ottawa in February, and we chatted about it, of course, in considerable length today. President Bush has given me his assurance that we can expect to see his administration take concrete action on acid rain very shortly. Subsequently, negotiations can begin on an acid rain accord to record our commitments to each other, as we have done already on a wide range of other environmental agreements. And I must tell you that I am encouraged, in fact I am very encouraged, as one who has fought the fight on behalf of getting rid of acid rain. I am very encouraged by the progressive stance taken on acid rain by President George Bush of the United States of America. The world needs the United States in the vanguard of environmental leadership. And I believe that President Bush is going to put the United States in precisely that kind of leadership position. Je dois vous dire que je suis encouragé par la position progressiste que le président Bush a adoptée à l'égard des pluies acides. Le monde a besoin que les États-Unis fassent partie des pays qui font preuve de leadership dans ce domaine. Et effectivement, le président est en train de faire preuve de ce leadership. Progress on the complex of global issues we face can only be made if the United States plays its full part. And I would like also, while I'm here in Washington, to acknowledge the progress made in the United States Congress on the protection of the environment. And I wish especially, if I may, to applaud Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell of Maine. There is no doubt in my mind that the changing attitudes that we are seeing on acid rain in the United States Congress is materially due to his unswerving leadership on this problem. And I believe that the combination of George Bush and George Mitchell and so many others who are committed to doing what is right in this vital area of our national lives, I believe that we will succeed. First, because Canada and the United States common environment requires it, but also because these gentlemen and these leaders know that it is right and they want to do what is right. But as Prime Minister Brundtland has often pointed out, solving the environmental issues of our day will take leadership and partnership, domestically, regionally, and globally. And leadership and partnership will need to come from all countries and from all sectors of our society. In Canada, we believe we are making some progress, some considerable progress, on our environmental agenda. We have passed a new Canadian Environmental Protection Act that is among the toughest in the world. We have adopted much stricter standards for handling PCBs, new emission standards as strict as any in the world for buses and heavy-duty trucks came into effect in December. We have committed ourselves to end within 10 years and sooner if possible the use of CFCs. An additional $125 million will be provided to help clean up the Great Lakes. A further $110 million has been identified to assist in the cleanup of the St. Lawrence River. Under our Environment Choice program, we are giving our seal of approval to environmentally friendly products, so Canadians will know firsthand that these products are not harmful to the environment. We plan new legislation on water quality and new regulations on toxic chemicals. We also plan to establish an Environmental Partners Fund to support local-level environmental cleanups. And perhaps most significantly, we have committed ourselves to the concept of sustainable development. We recognize that economic growth and environmental sensitivity are both indispensable. To help translate the theory into practice, we have enlarged the responsibilities in quite an historic way. We've enlarged both the responsibilities and the authority of the Minister of the Environment, the new Minister of the Environment, the Honorable Lucien Bouchard from Canada, who is present tonight and who I believe on the environmental scene plays a unique role in the industrialized democracies. His role is to ensure precisely that the environment has a priority hearing, receives priority attention and concern in respect of all industrial decisions being contemplated by other ministers of the Crown. Together, we will ensure that environmental issues are fully weighed in the course of our government's decision-making process. And I think that our international agenda has also been heavy. Montreal was selected by the international community as the site of the landmark 1987 International Conference on Protecting the Ozone Layer. Toronto was the site of the 1988 Economic Summit. And the Toronto communique was unambiguous in stating the priority that the leaders of the 7 major industrialized nations put, I think for the first time, Prime Minister, on environmental protection. A week later, Toronto hosted a conference on the changing atmosphere and its implications for global security, where Prime Minister Brundtland delivered, I can assure you, a keynote address of uncommon brilliance and authority. In September, my colleague, the Minister of Finance, presented the World Bank with a plan to ensure that protection of the environment is a major element in the bank's development projects. The same month, I announced to the General Assembly of the United Nations in New York our plan to create a Center for Sustainable Development in Winnipeg. This February, legal experts from around the world gathered in Ottawa to consider the elements of an international convention on the atmosphere. And in March, along with Minister Lucien Bouchard, I attended the Environmental Summit in The Hague. That summit issued a declaration that added further priority to the global environment as a policy issue and further impetus to innovate institutional cooperation. More particularly, the summit participants agreed to develop within the United Nations a new institutional authority to combat global warming, and they also agreed to promote compliance with the authority's decisions. And I think you'd be interested in what Flora Lewis of the New York Times wrote just a few days after that conference. It's significant because of its perceptiveness, but also because of the attention and the understanding that the environment is beginning to acquire, where people used to focus on the politics of an issue. It is now becoming clear that one can't segregate the environment from any major political initiative. Here's what she wrote after the conference. The environment is being recognized now as a global issue. These are profound shifts in the perceptions of the world, coming, she said, unevenly, in spasmodic bursts, but with a momentum reaching the stage of destiny. I think the comment is a very compelling and a persuasive one, and it indicates how far the environment and concerns of the environment have come in such a little time. The future environmental agenda is very full. We look forward especially to the 20th anniversary of the Stockholm Conference, where the world will take stock of progress since 1972 and chart a collective course for the future. For us in Canada, the Arctic will be a particular focus of interest. We plan to work with the other circumpolar countries, including Norway and the United States, in acquitting our common responsibility for the region's fragile ecosystem. I anticipate signing an Arctic and Northern Exchanges Agreement with the Soviet Union when I visit Moscow in the fall. Shortly, Canada's National Roundtable on the Environment and the Economy will be holding its inaugural meetings. The Roundtable, under Dr. David Johnston of McGill University, will bring together highly qualified Canadians to consider ways to help us integrate environmental and economic decision-making throughout Canadian society. The work of this new organization will help us rethink how we make our decisions, personally and professionally, that affect the common environment. If we are to preserve our environment, we need, as Einstein observed in a related context, we need to change our ways of thinking. The environment is our destiny. What is needed is a new environmental ethic. We need to value our environment as we value life itself. We will know that an environmental ethic is accepted when, for example, a company's environmental policy statement is as integral to its yearly report as its financial statement. And having been the president of a company, I can assure you that's a revolution in itself. But it is one that is coming along very quickly in a dramatic way. Every day, one who follows the evolution of corporate thought sees dramatic changes in all walks of life. We will know that an environmental ethic is established when industry leads government in the protection of the environment. And so with gratitude for your invitation, I challenge the business leaders here today to take the lead to go beyond the letter of the law, to fix what ain't broke before it breaks and the damage is done and the recriminations start. Use your genius and know-how in advance of trouble. Les sociétés multinationales en particulier peuvent exercer une influence positive absolument énorme, non seulement aux États-Unis puis au Canada, mais à travers le monde. Le monde a perdu un temps précieux pendant la dernière décennie à discuter d'idées dépassées sur la protection de l'environnement. And sometimes, when some associated with environmental questions insisted stridently on an all-or-nothing solution to problems, the environment had to be satisfied with nothing. So let us agree that we need economic growth to meet the aspirations of the human family, and that growth must be environmentally sustainable. It is, in fact, an indispensable part of the solution. And let us also agree that technology is not itself usually the issue either. When it is used wisely, we all benefit. It engenders prosperity. Prosperity engenders equality of opportunity. And equality of opportunity engenders social justice. And social justice is itself a powerful civilizing force. And that is what government is about. So when it is used wisely, we all benefit. And of course, it is when it is used insensitively that the effects can be catastrophic. And so I think that the problem is not so much technology as it is short-sightedness. Our nemesis is mankind itself. The essence of the new environmental ethic doesn't lie in condemning development and technology. It lies in recognizing the need to balance genius with wisdom, in allowing for sensitivity as well as profitability. Growth is good if it is in harmony with nature's laws. And so, Mr. Chairman and Prime Minister and colleagues and friends, let us join together, private and public sector, rich country and poor, in creating an environmental ethic we can all live with, and which will contribute to a more peaceful and to a more prosperous and to a more socially just world. Thank you.